And we are live from Take a Hike Studios just outside of Dallas, Texas. I'm your host, Christian Tatch, and this is College Football Now. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone of the chat ground rules. Absolutely no politics, no attacks on race, religion, creed, gender, or sexual preference. Let's keep it civil. Let's have a great conversation this week, guys. All right, here we go. So, just kind of want to open it up real quick. First of all, tell us where you're from, who your team is. Let us know you're out there in the chat. Let's kind of what a great first week of college football, man. It was entertaining. I spent all weekend watching every game possible. Started with game day at 8 a.m. our time and ended with the last game of the night on the West Coast with Stanford. There was also a USC game on, and that went way into the wee morning hours. Then we also had Oklahoma versus Houston at home on Sunday night, and we had Monday night's game, Notre Dame on the road at Louisville. Wow. Wow, a lot of good games, a lot of disappointing games, few upsets, a few things I was not expecting, and a few things that I thought really should have been a lot better. One of them is definitely going to be Missouri with the transfer quarterback from Clemson and Deshaun Watson. And the fact that they lost really was just kind of surprising, but we're going to go into some of that here in just a minute. Well, howdy there, Rich. Does Oklahoma have anything if Jalen Hurts gets hurt? We're going to go over that in a few minutes. Actually, it's one of my talking points here. The short answer right now is no. I don't think they do at the moment. Did not like what I saw of their backup, but it's young. It was early in the season without very many reps, but we'll get into that here shortly. So I think the format this week is I'm actually kind of want to talk about, we're going to break this down by conference because there were so many games, kind of want to try this out. So let's start off with the ACC. Their out-of-conference record was 4-2. Wake Forest was a 3-point win over Utah State. I expect a little more out of Wake Forest. But the Utah State Aggies really hung in there, provided a great game, but I think it was more along the lines that Wake Forest just wasn't ready to play. Duke loses big to Alabama. Figured that one. Duke just doesn't have it. I guess it was a handful of years ago. Duke did have a 10-win team. Stayed there competitive for a couple of years, but they don't have it either. Surprise in the ACC for me was Syracuse. 24-0 over Liberty, and really Syracuse being a top 25 team, figured Syracuse would provide a little more offense than what they did against a school like Liberty. Florida State, Florida State blows a 16-point lead or a 19-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Boise State just did everything right. They forced everything wrong on the Florida State side. Walks away with a win, and I believe Taggart down there in Florida State's probably on the hot seat. Here was another one that I really enjoyed watching. North Carolina versus South Carolina. Look, everybody went into this game thinking South Carolina was going to win. They're an SEC school. They're not necessarily bottom tier. They're about low middle tier in the SEC, but they're good enough to win some games. North Carolina played like they just wanted it more. They wanted to give Mack Brown his first win back on the sidelines in many years. And I tell you what, it was pretty cool seeing Mack Brown there doing a lot of the play calling, pumping up his players. He got very emotional after the game and teared up a little bit, even did a little dance with the players there in the locker room. That was kind of fun to watch. So hats off to Mack Brown. Glad to see you back on the sidelines. You seem to have recruited well in your first year there. in your recruiting class there. You did have a couple of freshmen play. Um, and you had, of course, Notre Dame beat Louisville on the road. I'm for one am one that likes the uh, chaos in there. I thought Louisville coming into this may have had some kind of off chance, and they really did give Notre Dame a run for their money this year or in this game. Early on, Notre Dame just couldn't shake them until the fourth quarter, so that was a fun game to watch. So again, the ACC starts off their out of conference record in week one was 4-2. Big 12, by far, I believe, had the best out of conference record. The competition wasn't necessarily there, but they did start their season off 10-0 against out of conference games. So, um, you know, OU beat Houston at home and really had that game in control the entire way. Yes, they did give up 31 points. I know what a lot of y'all are thinking, but a couple of those were very much garbage goal or garbage scores, and a couple of them were garbage time scores. I do believe that the OU defense is looking a lot better than they did last year. They're looking a little stronger. They're looking a little faster. And I believe what I saw was that the corners especially were playing tighter up against the receivers. You didn't see that a whole lot last year. You played a lot of softer zone. And I think it's because they didn't have the confidence and they were playing to their ability, which was basically guesswork and just trying to be around the ball if they could. But they got beat a lot on short and intermediate passes. And then by the time they caught on to that, they would try to play up a little bit. They would get beat long. So this game against Houston, which is a very good team. Houston, I believe, is going to win their conference this year. They looked very sharp, very fast. They really kind of hung around with them. So OU did not play a really bad team. And I think we learned a little bit about them. Jalen Hurts, I tell you what, is going to be another quarterback that's going to carry this Oklahoma team yet again for another year. I'm not ready to talk about Heisman yet, although he could be in the race. And I'm sure Oklahoma fans don't want to hear that. And I'm sorry, but I think it could happen. Jalen Hurts at the end of the game, it was hard to get him to smile. The reporter there at the end of the game was trying to get him to smile, tell him he did a great job and he had a great game, and he just kept continuing saying, "Look, we got a lot of work to do." She mentioned the single game record there and so on, his performance. He didn't want to hear anything about it. Just said, "Look, we were sloppy at times." Listen, OU fans, I'm sorry to have to tell you this because you guys are one of the biggest opponents for Alabama in their glory. However, this is Nick Saban's philosophy inside Jalen Hurts' head. This is what 3 years at the Alabama, on the Alabama football team, has done to his mentality. He comes in and nothing is good enough. And you're going to have a quarterback that is going to work harder than anybody else on that team. I saw a leader out there, and I saw a team that respected him. So that's really going to carry them a long way. How this season's going to go and whether or not they can make the playoffs again and possibly even beyond in the national championship game, it's too early to tell. Don't know where the defense truly lies. But, Rich, you are correct. Better discipline in the OU coverage. And Houston is full of talent and a lot of speed. Dana Holgorsen knows how to play against an Oklahoma team. He's been doing it for 15, 16 years or more. First as a offensive coordinator there for Oklahoma State, and then, of course, as a head coach at West Virginia. So hats off to OU. You came out. You played the game you needed to play. Now we're going to bring up Texas against Louisiana Tech. Let me tell you something. Look, Louisiana Tech is no slouch either. You want to talk about a speedy team, especially on defense. Louisiana Tech, for many years now, has been a team with a lot of speed, and they're not going to go quietly into the night. And Texas showed their muscle against Louisiana Tech. I think it was an impressive win, 45-14. The defense just shined. Again, against some speedy receivers and a quarterback that can also do some damage. So I believe that Texas was a bit vanilla. This is not a negative thing. They have a huge matchup coming this week against OSU at home. They don't want to show all their cards. They don't want to show everything that they can do. Ellinger didn't need to run a lot, but I guarantee you his legs and muscle are there. Again, Texas played the game they needed to play as a week one matchup against a decent Louisiana Tech team to really prep for this next week. Remember, the prep is not just showing how you can play against these teams before you go into a big matchup. Your prep is really the coaches coming out there. They know that they can do well against a team like this. So they come up and they run some plays that seem dumbed down, or even some plays they wouldn't typically run. But they have to know where they're at with those kind of plays, because in a game like next week against OSU, you're going to have to change it up. You're going to have to be able to do different things, because your game plan in these games a lot of times just is not going to work the whole game long. So you have to know what's in the back. So this week of practice, I think they go into it very positive based on how they played against Louisiana Tech. And I look forward to that game, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Oklahoma State wins a shootout against Oregon State. I know 52-36 seems like, is it really a shootout? It wasn't that close. It was. No defense out there whatsoever. This is a typical Gundy team. Oregon State has a lot of offense, no defense as well. This game turned out about the way that I thought it would. Really no surprise there. I don't believe, based on what I saw against an Oregon State team that won 2 games last year, is going to cut it in the Big 12. I think my early prediction of the Oklahoma State Cowboys being able to finish 3rd in the Big 12 may not be it. Oklahoma and Texas, and I'm not putting that in any order other than alphabetical, I promise. Those are the 2 teams to beat. Those are the 2 top teams. Everybody's playing for 3rd place, I believe. I don't think Oklahoma State's one of them. Iowa State over Northern Iowa in 3 overtimes. Look, you heard me talk about it before. Iowa State is really going to be a threat in the Big 12. They really are. Not only are they going to win some home games, but they are going to win a couple of away games, and at least one of them they shouldn't. All right? So you're thinking Northern Iowa, they're an FCS team. Yeah, they're a very good SCS team. All right, they've been hunting down that national championship in the FCS level for the last couple of years. They're going to do it again this year. They're a dangerous team. They're one of those teams that you can look at to really, upset somebody. This was their chance to do it. Iowa State shut them down, and I really think that's the way you need to look at this game. Not that they squeaked by an FCS team, but they shut down an upset-minded, very good FCS team. West Virginia, they looked bad against James Madison at home. 20-13. I think the loss of their head coach, their loss of Will Grier, is really going to hurt West Virginia. I don't expect them to do well in the Big 12 this year. They're going to win a couple of games, but I really don't see them being much of a threat. Hey, Nicholas, how are you? And yeah, Rob, James Madison does have a history of upsets. I still don't believe they should have looked this close against West Virginia, except for the points mentioned. You lost your head coach, who's been there for a number of years. Plus, Will Grier carried that team. We saw that last year. And when Will Grier and those receivers got shut down, they couldn't do anything else. Texas Tech had a big win, 45-10 over Montana State. It's a good confidence-boosting win for a brand-new coach out there. Baylor had a big offense against Stephen F. Austin. Now, I know it's Stephen F. Austin, but Baylor's been a question mark for a few years since they got busted. I'm going to tell you now that Baylor offense is going to wreak some havoc in the Big 12 this year. As the Big 12 starts shifting towards a little bit tougher defense, they're not still sure on what type of major defensive stand the Big 12 is going to start making with these teams. I think Baylor still surprises some people. I don't really expect them to, battle for the championship or even battle for third place. But watch out for them. If you've got some weaknesses on defense, especially the pass defense, watch out for Baylor. Kansas State, beat Nichols. There's not much to say there, guys. I mean, that's a team they should have beaten. They didn't play all that well. TCU wins against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Again, I don't think that was a big win, but it gets the season started. And like I said, the Big 12 goes 10-0. By far the best conference in week one. Was their competition that big? No, it wasn't, but doesn't matter. These are all confidence games. And I think they were very much needed, and it gave a view, especially in the Texas and Oklahoma games, as well as, and don't forget, Kansas. I'm sorry if I overlooked them. Kansas matches their 2018 win record in just the first week with 7-point win over Northern Iowa. I'm sorry, not Northern Iowa. That was Iowa State. But they do get a 7-point win. Congrats out there to the Mad Hatter. Les Miles, from what I understood, I watched part of the game. He didn't even have to eat any grass to get the win out there. So congratulations, Kansas Jayhawks, for matching you last year's win total. I expect you to win at least 4 more games this year, both out of conference games. And then I have a feeling you're going to be able to beat Kansas State this year. Your defense is going to get a little bit stronger as the year goes on, and he's got time to really fine-tune it. So there you go. Rich, UNT, North Texas. Look, I said this in week one, and in week 0, and I'm going to say it again. North Texas wins the conference this year, flat out. I don't see how they don't. They've got a Heisman capable quarterback out there, and I look forward to watching them play. I'm going to. There's a couple of games that they're going to have on TV, and I may even sneak away and try to catch them live this year. I just think that's a that's a group of 5 team that I think will do well. They're definitely going bowling again, and we'll see how that turns out. All right, next one up, we've got the Big Ten. Out of conference record this week was 10-4. Northwestern loses to Stanford by 10. That was expected. And the close game was as expected. Look, Northwestern has always been one of these teams, no matter what their record has been, it's always been one to play games close, especially against quality opponents that they're supposed to get blown out by. Stanford played a decent game against them. I believe that Stanford, who sits at the 23rd spot in the rankings, is, they're a good team. I still believe that the top in the Pac-12 belong to Oregon and Washington, but I do believe that Stanford is definitely a threat, and they are definitely an upset-minded team. You've got Wisconsin in a dominant run game with a 49-0 win over South Florida. South Florida, they're not world beaters either, but I told you guys that the running back there at Wisconsin was definitely going to blow some doors open this season. They're going to continue doing that with that run game. Big Ten, you better be on notice, especially Michigan and Ohio State, Penn State, all these teams that you need to watch out for that run game. And just when you think you may have that run game slowed down, their quarterback is just good enough to beat you with his arm and legs as well. Still don't think Wisconsin wins the Big Ten, but they are going to turn some heads this year. And they may, with decent run games against those 3 conference foes, could have the Heisman winner in that running back. Ohio State has a great debut for quarterback Justin Fields. 24-point win over Florida Atlantic. They started slow, but they did all right, and they did exactly the game that they needed to do in order to be able to win. See where they're fixing, what points they need to fix coming into the season. Penn State with a 72-point win over Idaho. Look, I understand. It's Idaho. But just as good a teams, played just as bad a teams, and didn't win this big. 79-7 was the final score on that one. They did nothing wrong in that game, and really, there's not much to talk about there. Nebraska struggles early against South Alabama, but Nebraska is a team that's coming off of a very bad Scott Frost, first-year coach Scott Frost last year. Their season was just not good, not was expected. Did see some things in that game that have tightened up, look better than Nebraska did last year. Martinez is going to be a QB that is going to continue to develop in both his running game and passing. And yes, Rob, I do believe that at the moment, Nebraska does deserve to be ranked. In the simple fact, they do have a tough schedule with some games they can win. They started the season ranked. And you cannot sit there and really punish a team that won by knocking them out of the rankings. However, they are not a true number 25 ranking. They are tied with Iowa State in the 25th spot, which we'll go over in a second. And then Maryland has a huge day with a 79-point win against Howard. Nothing big there. Conference USA had a few good games with Army over Rice and Tulane over Florida International. Those were fun to watch if you didn't get to catch those. Hey there, Madison, and things are going well. Thanks for checking in. Appreciate that. Well, and I did say that horrible near misses should, but this was when we were talking about a number 2 team in the nation almost losing to an way unranked team, Rob. So that's really kind of where my point was with that. A team like Alabama squeaking by a team like the Citadel should move them down a ranking or 2, but it wouldn't have knocked them out of the rankings. Just like a loss probably would not have knocked them out of the rankings. I think with Nebraska, they showed just enough. They did have a near win, but I don't think it was enough to just get them out. They did move down. They were 24th. They did move down a spot, but I don't think winning their game was enough to knock them completely out of the top 25. Let's go to the Pac-12. 6-3 in their out-of-conference record this week. UCLA loses to Cincinnati. Great game. Loved watching that one. I expected that one. Cincinnati was an 11-2 season team last season. Oregon State loses to Oklahoma State. Stanford beat Northwestern, though. USC beat a very good Fresno State Bulldogs in a very close matchup, one that was very fun to watch. Loved a lot of things about both teams. Keep an eye out for Fresno State. They could make a run at their conference as well. Then let's talk about the Oregon loses to Auburn. I'm going to tell you something right now. Oregon had that game in hand the entire game. And I tell you what surprised me was Oregon's defense. Now, we expect Auburn to have defense. I expected Auburn to have a little bit of learning curve on offense, considering the players that they've lost. And for the first time in 40 years at the University of Auburn, they started a freshman quarterback, a true freshman quarterback. They hung in there, though. They didn't allow the mistakes to rattle them. For a young quarterback, I've got to give Bo Nix over there a kudos for staying in the game, keeping his leadership, getting better throughout the game, and then the final 9 seconds, instead of just getting them within field goal territory, throws a contested pass on the 2-yard line. The guy bobbles it, catches it, turns around, touchdown for the win. Saw some impressive things there. I do believe Oregon initial ranking of 16 was good. We're going to talk about their new ranking here in just a minute, though. So, tough loss for Oregon. I still think they can be playoff bound. If this remains their only loss and they can beat Washington, they can beat Stanford, and they can win, who I think is going to be against the Utah Utes in the Pac-12 championship game, they could, depending on what the rest of the teams do, end up in the playoffs. All right, now we're going to talk about one of the most disappointing conferences. Well, there's only one left, right? The SEC. Guys, the SEC looked bland. They looked terrible this week in a lot of their games. We're going to start off talking, and first off, I want to talk about the Texas A&M game a little bit that happened on Thursday night. They did a great job in what they were supposed to do. There were some things that we wanted to see from a Texas A&M squad before they head to Clemson next week. The defensive line lost a lot of players. Matter of fact, they lost 4 of their defensive line. Defensive line still looked great against the run. Pass defense looked a little better than it did last year. And Kellen Mond, we'll talk a little bit more about him in just a minute. So the SEC, Missouri. First of all, the out-of-conference record was 7-4 in this week, and we're not talking against world beaters either. Come on, guys. Missouri loses by 6 on the road at Wyoming. Look, Wyoming has their on years, their off years. They're upset-minded. I get it. This should not have been a loss, especially with Clemson QB transfer Kelly Bryant. The guy that led Clemson to a national championship 2 years ago had the starting job up until the middle of week 2 or 3, got hurt, got replaced by Trevor Lawrence. He was ready to play the rest of the year, didn't, transferred to Missouri. Look, he was still brilliant, though. He passed for 423 yards and 2 touchdowns in their loss to Wyoming, which tells me his supporting cast. Look, that offensive line was not good. Bryant had to scramble all game long, and the defense just wasn't there. South Carolina loses on the road to North Carolina. We talked about that earlier. Ole Miss loses to Memphis. Now, look, people look at this as a really bad loss, but you're talking because you see an SEC team against Memphis. But let me tell you something. Memphis is a decent team. They're a good team. They've always been offensive-minded. Look, Ole Miss is rebuilding. They are not going to be good this year whatsoever. Still expected them to win that one. They didn't. I picked that game incorrectly. And then I'm sorry, but come on, guys. Peyton Manning must just bury his head on Saturday. Tennessee loses at home against Georgia State. And to be honest with you, even with the score the way it was, I don't believe it was even that close. Look, Jeremy Pruitt has got... I don't think he lasts the season. And he's definitely... Tennessee is not going to be a threat in the East. They were not prepared for this game. And we're talking about Georgia State. A team that, no offense to Georgia State and their fans, their university, and their players... But that's a team you don't even have to be that prepared for in order to beat. So that was definitely surprising. Look, Arkansas squeaked by Portland State. Barely, right? I think they won by a touchdown. But they've already won half as many games as they did last year. A 2-win Arkansas team last year, already 1-0 this year. So, go Pigs, I guess. Alabama started against Duke with a 3-and-out, a fumble, and a missed field goal. Then they started rolling just the way Alabama does. Look, Tua came in, really turned it up, got his team together, realized they were embarrassed, and they started playing the way they were supposed to. Tua's brother came in, second half, first play on the college level, touchdown. Let me tell you something, guys. If you thought... And I saw this through his high school days, some videos that I saw of him, how touted he was. Don't ask me to pronounce his name right now. I'm just calling him Tua's brother. If you guys think that Alabama's now going to start suffering at quarterback when Tua leaves at the end of the season, you're sadly mistaken. His brother is just as good. He was actually touted as being better than Tua in high school. So watch out. LSU looked strong. All facets of the game. Now, granted, they also didn't play any world beaters, but Burrow is finding his feet. Last year, towards the end of the year, just before the A&M game, he started to become more of a leader. He started becoming more of a passer, and he did it this week. I think they're going to be good to go when they take on Texas next week. So, that being said, let's move right along. Let's talk about the rankings this week. Look, not a whole lot of changes, but what you are going to see, Whoops. Right down here. Remember I told you Nebraska moved down from 24th to be tied for 25th with Iowa State. Couldn't really determine which team should have won bigger, so they gave them a tie early in the season. I don't mind it. We got to see what they do moving forward. One of the big jumps, obviously, was Auburn. Now, personally, look, yes, it was a big win. It was a win against a number 11th ranked Oregon. Okay, they're at the Death Star at Jerry World here in Arlington, Texas. I'm not sure I agree with that voting. As a matter of fact, I think with this voting, I really disagreed with this move. I do believe Oregon should have slipped back to the 15th, 16th position because they did lose when they had a lead the entire game. However, Auburn, I believe, should have moved up to probably the 12th spot, pushing Texas A&M up a spot and kind of done it that way. Instead, Auburn leapfrogs from 16th, leapfrogs everybody, and goes in and at 10th. Part of the reason why they were able to get in at 10th is Florida moved down. After their very tight win, they moved down 3 spots. Now, again, not sure I agree with that, considering that the other teams around Florida also won. They didn't move down. They all moved up. Florida's the only team that really won big and moved backwards. Not big, but against a decent team. And they moved back on, several spots. Now, their win was not as dominant. And I think that's the reason why they did it. So your top 7 or 8 stayed the same. Texas did move up to number 9. I do agree with that, considering the other changes. I also see that Utah did move up 1 spot with their win. Washington moved down a spot with their win, but again, it's because of the shuffling that happened because of the Oregon-Auburn game. You had Oregon move down 5 spots. Again, I believe that was a good call. Wisconsin moved up 2 with their dominant win, bringing UCF and Michigan State down each by 1, both winning slightly in their games. And then you had Syracuse, Washington State, and Stanford all move up 1 or 2. Iowa staying the same. Boise State was not ranked. They moved up to the 24th spot. And that's because of a big win on the road against Florida State. Look, I know Florida State wasn't big ranked last year. They're not supposed to be all that great this year. But Boise State did what they had to do to win in a hostile environment on the road. And then again, of course, Iowa State and Nebraska tied for 25th. Let's talk about some action this week, guys. There's some fun games to watch. First one I'm going to talk about. Now, I was talking with some friends, and I've been really going over this week. I've been struggling with a couple of things. One is my pick in the biggest game of the week. But I also have an issue with picking up my upset of the week. So I actually have 2. Decided to go with this format. So surprise, everybody. Here we go. I have what I call the most probable upset. And then I have the most adventurous upset pick of the week. My probable upset pick of the week is right here. If you look right down below, Maryland at home versus number 21 Syracuse. Maryland had a great game, put up a lot of points. Their offense is gelling. Look, Syracuse I picked to finish number 2 in the ACC. I still picked them to finish number 2. However, out of all the top 25 games happening this week, I feel like the team with the biggest momentum against a ranked team is going to be Maryland versus Syracuse. They've got them at home. Syracuse struggled a little bit. At the number 21 ranking, I don't know if Syracuse played a game well enough last week to really be prepared for the type of offense they may face. So that is my safe upset pick of the week. Here in a little bit, we're going to go over my adventurous pick of the week. All right, game number 2. SMU in North Texas. Guys, don't laugh. Don't laugh. Look, I told you I wanted to watch North Texas this year. I told you that I wanted you guys to try to watch North Texas this year. This is one that I believe will be on TV locally if you live in the Dallas area. Check it out. I think that this is another chance for that quarterback find to go in there and really show his stuff. I don't expect SMU to be too much trouble for North Texas. But again, if you have a chance to watch it, do it. Watch and see what North Texas is about. They're going to be fun to watch this year, and I think this game is going to be a good showcase for their talent. And you're right, Battle of the North Dallas Suburbs. That's right. All right, game number 3. University of Miami and North Carolina. The reason why I picked this game as one to watch is because I want to see how Mack Brown rolls going into another week, this time on the road against a Miami team that is extremely disappointed in their loss to Florida. It's also a Miami team that looks to be better this year than they were last year. I want to see how Miami reacts to that loss. They've had extra time to be able to prepare for this game against North Carolina. Again, they're at home. The crowd, I'm not sure is going to be that big of a deal. I don't think they sold out one game last year. As a matter of fact, I don't think they hit 75% if I read it right at the end of last season. But this will be a good test for Mack Brown and a brand new North Carolina team with lots of freshmen on the road. For you Mack Brown fans, I think this will be a good game for you guys to watch and see what they can do. Okay, so we have our game of the week. Later. This one is the worst game of the week. Oh, this is the SEC gutter teams. I'm sorry, Ole Miss fans, Arkansas fans. It's just my opinion. Look, I love the history of both schools. Obviously, they have a winning tradition. Arkansas used to play in the Southwest Conference, so I know a bit about them growing up. But listen, these two teams are bad. They're very bad this year. But if you want to watch a game that may not end until Monday because no one can seem to find a score and stop anybody, this will be the game to watch. It might even still be going on during your primer for the NFL game on Sunday. So if you want to check it out, fine. But this is Christian's bad game of the week. The Battle of the Outhouse. Well, I can't call it that, but good suggestion. All right, so another good game I'm going to pick is outside of the out in the Pac-12 out there out west. This will be number 14 Washington versus Cal. They're at home against Cal. Look, Cal's a team that is always an upset-minded team. This is definitely would be an upset game for them. I don't think that they do it, but Cal is just strong enough, and there's enough tradition between these two schools and enough history to make this a formidable game for Washington to prove that they're on the right track. I take Washington on this one, and but I think it will be an entertaining game to watch. Next up, Oregon versus Nevada. Why did I pick this game? Look, Oregon is reeling after that Week 1 loss against Auburn. They've got something to prove. They're at home. They do not want to lose against a team like Nevada in front of their home fans. But Nevada, they are a team that had a decent record last year. They're a team that's going to play tough. And I think Oregon is going to get a little frustrated in the first quarter. Well, actually, I think Oregon's going to come out strong in the first quarter, prove a point, then they're going to get stumped in the second quarter, not really know what to do, and then starting in the third, they'll pull away again. But it'll be good to see how they move forward after that tough loss here in Arlington against Auburn. Next one up, Nebraska versus Colorado. Now, I do know that in some of the experts' opinions, some of the people I've talked to this week, what I've seen online, this one is a lot of people's upset game of the week. Colorado is going to be a fairly middle-of-the-road, but upper middle-of-the-road team in the Pac-12 this year. There is a big history between these two schools. Nebraska didn't show enough last week to tell me that they can go through and start beating up on anybody they want to. This game is going to be close. This game is going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a beating, but I still take Nebraska in this one. I'm sorry, Colorado. I just don't think you're there yet. And Nebraska and Scott Frost, I believe they have something to prove. And I think Martinez is going to throw all over the Buffalo this weekend. All right, so next up I've got, again, on the West Coast, I have the USC Trojans at home against Stanford. Look, USC, I don't think they're back in the way people want to think they're back. I didn't think that at the end of last season either. However, I do not believe that Stanford is completely ready for the rigorous schedule they have ahead of them either. But this is a chance for them to prove they deserve to still be in the rankings. Going on the road and beating the Trojans in a hostile environment in front of fans that truly believe this is the year that USC can compete again for the Pac-12 title. I don't see it, but it is going to be an environment that Stanford's going to have to look out for. I do believe that there is no upset here, though. I do believe Stanford can pull this out towards the end of the game. And I think they just outlast them on defense. And I think they outlast them by the running game yet again. I know McCaffrey's not there, but, it hasn't been for a few years. But I think they're getting that swagger back. That quarterback also has a set of legs on him, so they have several options there. I think this is going to be USC's first loss of the season. Unfortunately for them, it's going to be at home. Let's see. Now, this, my friends, is my adventurous upset pick of the week. That's right. Cincinnati on the road at Ohio State. Look, I'm not a big proponent of Ohio State this year. I think they've had too many years in a row where they've had a disappointing loss when they shouldn't. This year, I do not think it's going to be Purdue. I do not think it's going to be a team like Northwestern. And I do not think it's going to be a team like Iowa. I think it could be against a team like Cincinnati. Look, Cincinnati finished 11-2 last year. Granted, the one of the losses they had was the only ranked opponent they had, which was UCF. But, look, Cincinnati is one of those teams that loves to come in and play somebody very, very rigorously. And I do believe that Ohio State, it's not that they're not going to be prepared, but this is the game, guys. If you're an Ohio State fan, and if you really want to see what college football is like in the horseshoe this year, this is the game to watch. You're going to have to see how Ohio State can defend their home turf against a team that is definitely upset-minded, definitely has the firepower, and definitely has the want to go into the number 5 team's house and beat them there. So if you really want to see where Ohio State is at the beginning of the season, this is the game to watch. So this is Christian's adventurous upset pick of the week. Now we're going to float on to the final 2 games I want to talk about. First, we have a very tough game happening Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Central Time. This one has almost most of the buzz going into the week 2. Number 1, Clemson hosting number 12, Texas A&M. Okay, guys. First of all, I'm going to tell you right now, I do not see an upset happening in this game. If I had to make a comparison to last year's 2-point loss at home, where A&M loses against Clemson on a couple of bad ref calls, couple of bad plays, some decisions they probably could have made differently, and an inexperienced starter in Kellen Mond, I would have to say the game will be fairly close like last year. However, here are the talking points about this game. First of all, on the Texas A&M side of the ball. Again, as I mentioned, alluded to earlier, the pass defense does look a lot better. There wasn't very many pass plays at all last week where anybody was beat. Somebody was around the ball at all times. Replacing the defensive line does not look like that was a problem. Look, we did not rush the passer as much as we'd seen in the past, but we controlled that backfield. Again, could not run against Texas A&M, and I do not believe that most people are going to be able to run against the Aggies this year. On the flip side of the ball, You've got a receiving core that is returning every member that they did last year, plus a freshman receiver that's just finding his feet. The running back, Travion Williams, went to the NFL, leaving backup running back Corbin, and then a backup to him and Etwee. I do believe that the stable is still full at Texas A&M. Corbin is a workhorse and can still carry that team if needed be. Now, he's not going to have as many explosive plays breaking through the line. He is still going to be able to gain that extra 2 or 3 needed yards after contact. And if he can break through a hole that's already there, he has the speed to go to the distance. Kellen Mond does look like the quarterback that he needed to look like in week 1. See, last year his arm strength wasn't quite there. His accuracy wasn't quite there. He made some incredible plays this last Thursday night at home against Texas State. Some athletic plays, and he looks bigger. He's bulked up. I like the decisions that he made during that game and look forward to seeing what kind of decision making he makes in the next game when he's under pressure a lot more. And the reason why he's going to be under pressure a lot more is because Texas A&M has an offensive line that looked absolutely atrocious last week. They could not seem to stop the ends from coming in there and disrupting the plays, and these ends were beating their initial blocks and going down the line up to 2 spots to get through. Just too much. The Clemson side, remember, they lost all 7 of their up front defensive linemen. That's going to pose a problem for the run game from Texas A&M and the pass rush from Clemson. I think that what's going to be able to happen is Mond is going to be able to get out of the pocket if needed, and he's going to find some holes to run the ball or at least buy some time. However, the defensive backs at Clemson are still as good as they have been in the last couple of years. And on the offensive side of the ball, they have great offensive weapons in their receivers. Etienne ran for 204 yards, on just 12 carries last week. That's an average of 17.4 yards a carry. Can he do that against A&M? Absolutely not. Okay? Is he going to do that again all season? More than likely not. But he's not going to have to because he does have quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who can throw the ball all over the field and mix it up through many different receivers. The problem that I think Clemson is going to have going into this game is that Trevor Lawrence was just above 50% in his passing for about 193 yards. I don't believe he got enough reps in to control the offense because Etienne ran so well. So where does that leave me? I still believe that with Dabo Swinney there, he knows what needs to happen. He respects the Texas A&M offense. But I don't believe that Texas A&M has what it takes to take Clemson on the road in front of a very hostile environment with fans and players that remember the narrow loss last year. Clemson is out to prove a point that they are the best team in the nation. This is the very first time in school history that Clemson has started ranked number 1, and they do not want to upset. They do want to continue to be number 1 all the way through the national championship game, and I think that they can do it. Now for the game you've all been waiting for. CFB Now's Game of the Week. This features number 9 Texas Longhorns at home in Austin against the number 6 LSU Tigers. Boy, howdy, I'm looking forward to this one. This one kicks off at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. I want to believe it's on ABC or CBS. I apologize, I did not write that down. Some of y'all probably know. But if you are a college football fan, even in the slightest, if you know a college football fan, even in the slightest, if you have kids that have no idea what any of this is except they can draw the shape of a football, get them in front of the TV this week for this game. All right, my opinions on this one. Let's discuss, and feel free to put in the fan chat anything that you guys want to mention on this. However, this one is very hard for me to pick. So let me describe how I see these two teams, and I'll make my pick here at the end to end the show. So, first let's start with LSU. They're the visiting team. Last week they played a Georgia State team. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just really no. I'm sorry. Last week, they played a team that they really should have beat. They looked well doing it. Look, Joe Burrow has finally found his feet. Again, I mentioned it earlier. He looks like a more poised quarterback. He was able to play a primer game where he could really work out that arm, work out his reads, and trust his receivers and offensive line. I'm still not completely sold on their running game. However, I believe Joe Burrow has what it takes to be able to lead this team to hostile environments, both home and on the road, and do very well. As a matter of fact, I pick them at the moment to be able to upset the SEC, take down Alabama, and go to the SEC championship game. Their defense is a typical LSU defense. Coach O loves to play defense, and they do it very well. Their corners can shut down just about any passing game except across the middle in the short out routes. They have a problem shutting that down. So Texas, you want to expose that. You're going to have to work on making sure that you don't try to eat those touchdown plays all in the first couple of plays of the drive. You're going to have to do this in chunks. No easy yardage in this game. On the Texas side of the ball, I loved what I saw with Ehlinger last week. I believe he's definitely the leader that Texas needs right now. Their running game also seemed to be very strong. Their defense is solid. Absolutely solid. The only thing that I did see in their defense is occasionally their run defense would miss an assignment and get blocked off the ball, causing a hole. But their linebackers would usually come in, help close it down without too big a yardage gain with the occasional longer yardage plays. They can shut down the pass. The problem is the deep ball, is that their cornerbacks do have a tendency to get beat deep. And they don't turn their heads around quite at the time that they should. LSU can use this in their favor to throw the deep ball on a whim that it's either going to be dropped with a pass interference or caught. So, what do I see happening here? If this game comes down to the lockdown defenses that both teams have, Texas and LSU, and it comes down simply to the quarterback play, and you've got two defenses that can really shut down the passing game, the quarterback play is really going to come off of, is the quarterback mobile? And if they are, how good are they picking up yardage after contact? And in that respect, I give Texas and Sam Ehlinger the nod in that situation. However, I don't think that's what the situation is going to be. I am going to pick LSU to win on the road this week. Not that I'm hoping for it. I just believe that the talent that the LSU team has been around a little bit longer in a type of league that is geared for these type of games. Texas, yes, you are back. I strongly believe that. However, your comeback started at the middle to end of last season. Your biggest two games last year that you were able to win was the game against OU and the bowl game against Georgia. For me to think that you're actually going to be able to live up to this ranking fully and beat an LSU team that is hungry, that has the SEC title in sights, and has a strength of schedule that the way that they do, I just believe that LSU is going to be a little bit more prepared and come out with the play at the end. It's going to be close. I'm calling this right about what the line is. I think it's going to be somewhere around 7 to 9 points, though. It's a little bit more than what the line is. I think that a couple of plays are made late. LSU ends up finding a way to score to go ahead just enough where Texas needs 2 scores to win. And they get a little flustered and make a couple of mistakes. LSU is able to shut them down at the end of the game. That is my prediction, folks. Again, no slight to anybody. Think this is definitely the game of the week. Everybody in the nation is going to be watching this one. Texas, you are back. LSU, you are strong enough to take the SEC. Now it's time to put those two together and see who comes out on top. The meaning of this game, by the way, you heard me talk about LSU's meaning for Texas. I believe this is the defining game for your season. Even more so than the Red River game in Dallas coming up in October. I think you win this game against LSU after you had beaten a very good Georgia team in the Texas Bowl last year. This being your next SEC game. You leave out of this with a win. You can beat your chest proudly. You will have the confidence that you can take on any team, but you're going to be smart enough not to get shocked by any team. You win this game against LSU, you win the Big 12. That, folks, closes out the podcast for this week. I really appreciate you guys joining. Please, please, please spread the word. Get it out there. Let people know to come in, join, subscribe, do the fan chat. I love reading the comments. And make sure you comment below here and on the Facebook group page, CF or College Football Now. Again, thanks again. Watch some football this weekend. Let's talk next week. We will be back at 7:30 p.m. Next week, unless I get enough feedback that the 8 p.m. Central Time was a better time for people to join and watch. I believe starting this week, I am going to post the recorded version of this that YouTube does once the session goes down. And I am going to start posting this in the College Football Now page on Facebook group page, just so that people who missed it can watch it and know to come back next week and watch it live. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Be safe. See you next week. Watch football.